Mr. Petroulis,
Hannes.
thanks for coming on, mate.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you both.
Just before we start, how much did it cost for that new haircut?
It's a skin fade with a 0.5 into a 1 or
$60 for the hair, another $20 for the eyebrows, boys.
oh,
We're
very
all out
good.
for you both.
You've got to do what
Fantastic.
you've got to do.
That's right.
Adrian, obviously, we got to know each other recently, which is great. Know a little bit about your story. We'll get to that maybe a bit later. Off the cuff, what's the best deal you've done in property over the journey?
Best deal I've done in property was a property that we bought in Shepparton a couple of years ago. And I'll tell you why. Not only did I get a, excuse me, not only did we buy the property, but that's how I met my wife. So I was
double.
looking for land in Shepparton at the time, came across a real estate agent, gave him a call, introduced myself. He was a local. He knew a lot of the farmers in the area. So, you know, he ended up showing us a few properties. We ended up purchasing the property through him. From there, we ended up continuing talking as friends. And over time, I got to know a bit about his family. He mentioned he had a sister. A little bit more time went on. And, you know, I was keen to meet her because it sounded like she was a great girl. So one day I mustered up the courage to ask him, and thankfully he said yes. So I messaged her seeing if I could take her out for dinner, and she said yes, thankfully. And now we're married, and we're expecting a daughter in May next year.
Huge.
Yes.
That people listening might also say that's probably the most expensive property you've purchased as well in time.
Can you
But
ta-
it was
can you-
worth
can
every
you-
penny. So
Can you tell
that-
us a bit about the high-level details of the deal?
So the site was 110 acres,
Yep.
going through a rezone in the Shepparton Southeast PSP, probably yield about 520 lots. So that site was purchased in late 2021 on 3-year terms, off market. So that was a deal done at Goldfields Group where I worked previously. So they'll deliver that project in due course.
Fantastic.
Very good. And we're and at the moment, depending which asset class you're in, there's obviously different performance metrics going on. Where do you see the market at the moment?
I think we're at the bottom of the market. I think everyone can agree this is probably the bottom of the market, and you know, hopefully rates start coming down early to mid next year, which will bring some positivity back into the market. Realistically, even if there's a rate drop, it's not just going to take off overnight the market again. It's going to need 12 months. So, you know, I think we're at the bottom now. Hopefully next year there's some positivity in the market. Things are going to start to pick back up. And I think, you know, 2026, things are going to really start flying.
We've also recently sold you a site in Vesper Drive,
Yes.
Narrowon, which was great to deal with you and get that through. Traditionally, you guys have been more, Charles Lloyd, the group that you do work for, has been more a mixed-use development residential company that deals with that sort of space. You're now moving more towards industrial, clearly.
Yep.
Take us through that, and where do you see, I guess, the positives in regards to moving into industrial?
Yeah, sure. So I've been doing acquisitions for the last 8 years, predominantly in the residential globo land space. Every year it's gotten harder and harder to acquire Greenfield land for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons is the Victorian Planning Authority isn't rezoning land anywhere near as quickly as it should. Mm-hmm. So what happens there is there's a very limited supply of PSP approved stock, which means more people are fighting over the same sites. So that's makes it very hard to acquire land. Aside from that, there's always issues with regards to servicing the lot. So, you know, there could be no sewer, no drainage, you know, there's significant infrastructural works required. So then the project doesn't stack up. So it just become harder and harder to acquire residential land. We're also finding in terms of sales rates, it's getting very hard to sell land lots at the moment. A lot of people have objections and concerns about employing a builder, given all the builders that have gone belly up, you know, since COVID. So, you know, it's been tough to get sales, especially in Victoria. People are moving out of this market. So we thought, well, if we move into the industrial space, we're mitigating the build risk because we're delivering, you know, a turnkey warehouse to the end buyer. So we're mitigating that risk, and we're effectively buying a service titled lot that someone has, you know, developed whenever. Could be, you know, in the last 12 months, could be 20 years ago. So all your service and connection points are there as well. So it's just a lot easier from a due diligence and acquisition perspective to acquire industrial land, and that market's still performing strongly.
Have you had any bad experiences with builders go under?
I haven't personally. So thankfully we haven't.
Very good.
But it's, something that we always have to be concerned about.
Certainly happening. We were chatting on before. I thought it was a really good question. Obviously, we're all football fans here. Adrian and I are probably more nuffies than most.
Full nuff Carlton supporters.
Yeah, definitely. Dan.
Big Carlton nuffies. Love to spend the weekends on Lygon Street.
And we're just talking about Vossi and the top 4 or 5 redheads to play the game. So who? Michael Voss.
Yep.
Cameron Ling. Josh Bootsma.
Yep.
And Dan Hannabery.
Dan Hannabery would have to be number 1.
Well, it was amazing. The Forgotten Stars tagged me in a post last night out of nowhere. It's been years since this post has gone up, and he goes, "Oh, you're a bit stiff here at D Hannabery." So he for some reason plucked that out of nowhere. So good luck to Forgotten Stars. He's a good man, and he does good work. But I think someone at Channel 7 didn't like me too much to put me in that category. What do you reckon?
Look, in this light,
Caroline Wilson doesn't work.
Looks a bit red?
Yeah, a little bit red.
Caroline Wilson doesn't work for Channel 7, does she?
Be careful where you go there, Mr. Petroulis.
Very good.
Back to the property side of things. Since on to sort of the issues you were speaking about with servicing, whatever else, in some of the projects you've developed, different asset classes, what's been 1 or 2 of the biggest issues you face, and how have you rectified it during the project?
One of the biggest issues you'll face now is if there's cultural heritage significance on the land. That is a nightmare to work through. If there's a salvage that's required to clean up the artifacts, that can be very expensive, take a lot of time. So that's an issue. If there's native vegetation, or if there's koala habitats that have to be offset somewhere else, these are issues that take a long time to resolve and can be very expensive. Ideally, the best way to mitigate that is to buy sites that don't have these overlays and reports required on them. So if you can find a clean site, you're always going to be better off. And if you can find a site with a permit, even better, because someone else has mitigated that risk for you.
If you're in the government today and you're advising the powers to be in how to stimulate more growth in the property market, especially in the development sector, what would be some of the key messages you try and drive through?
I would be saying stop all this crap about trying to bring people into apartments. Rezone Greenfield land. People want a house and land. They don't want to live in apartments in Reservoir and Thomastown and all these other areas that you're proposing. People want to have a house on a block of land, garage. That's what people want here, because it's affordable here. When you look at markets like Sydney, a lot of people live in apartments because it's just too expensive. But here, it's still very affordable. You can buy a house and land, $550, $650, $750. Most couples can afford that. So there's no reason to be pushing them into apartments when house and land is still affordable here.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So what's your take on that? Given that, what's your take on this recent move into the whole build to rent sector? Where do you see that going? Do you see the long-term viability of it, or do you not really see how it's going to stack up? Or is it purely just these super funds trying to get these small returns that eventually won't really solve the issue?
Well, I think with the government, what the government wants to do won't work, because it's going to be too expensive to build. And then what you need to sell these apartments for is no one's going to buy them. So they'll sit there vacant, or they won't get built. So they're just wasting time. And then they'll finally realise we've got to go back to Greenfield. And then, by that time, there'll be such a limited supply in the market that prices will have just gone through the roof.
So you don't reckon that there'll be a demand for the potential tenants to go in there and rent these properties either?
Tenants, I think there's always a demand for tenants everywhere. I think there's definitely a demand for that, but in terms of someone coming and building and then selling them, I don't think that will work.
So
interesting.
So we should all go invest
in heaps of unzoned Greenfield.
Greenfield,
not
in
unzoned.
land.
You need to find something within the urban growth boundary that's earmarked in a precinct structure plan that's going to be rezoned over the next 10 years. That's what I would be saying.
So how did you start at Charles Lloyd?
Charles Lloyd. So I've known the guys at Charles Lloyd for 8 years. So before I was in acquisitions, I was a real estate agent doing effectively acquisition sales, development sites, and global land transactions, mostly off market. And I did that for probably five or so years. So I knew the guys from there. I ended up selling 5 sites for them, a combination of super lots, a couple of Greenfield parcels, and an apartment site. And then I also helped them acquire 2 sites, one in Greenvale, which was about 36 lots, and then another one in Tarneet, which is about 88 lots. So I've known them for a long time, and they became friends over that journey, and there's a lot of trust there. So they ended up reaching out to me while I was at Goldfield, just asking, if I was happy there and if I'd consider an opportunity, and the right opportunity was presented by them. So I'm an executive director of the business. I have equity in the business. So it was the right time and the right opportunity for me and my family to make the move across.
What about mindset? It's a big thing this day and age. Things don't always go smoothly in the property game. There's relationship issues, general personal challenges people go through. How do you maintain a positive mindset or some even a mindset of discipline through the ups and downs?
One thing that's very important to me is gratitude. So every day I wake up, I got a roof over my head. I'm healthy. My wife's healthy. My family's healthy. What more do you want? Because if God forbid that wasn't the case, you would realize that all the bullshit we deal with day to day, this guy fucked me over, I've missed out on this listing, I missed out on buying that, it means nothing. If you didn't have your health, do you think you would care about any of that stuff? You wouldn't. So that's the most important thing for me, and that's what I think about every day, especially when I'm having a bad day.
It's brilliant.
I need to do a bit more of that.
You have to. No, seriously, you have to. And so I have friends that say, and he may be someone that says the same thing. But if their football team loses, it's going to ruin my weekend.
Or year.
And I say, seriously, who gives a fuck? If you were really sick, would you give a fuck about your team? No, I wouldn't. Exactly. So then you realize how small it is, and then you realize how privileged we are. That these are the things that are causing us inconvenience. If it's these little things are the biggest problems we have, how blessed are we? Seriously.
It's a good perspective, because I guess there's those days where you feel like you're running out of control, you're super stressed. Having that sort of level of perspective or awareness will probably take the edge off just slightly, albeit if there's a tough deal that's going to get across the line, you're still going to probably lose a bit of sleep over it.
There's millions and billions of people in the world that would rather swap places with us. Of course I get stressed. Of course I get shitty. Of course I have sleepless nights. Absolutely. But, just in general.
Dealing with lawyers.
Hey?
Dealing with lawyers, trying to get the contracts
exactly. Through. Of course they still affect me. I'm not saying these things don't affect me, but I try and put it in perspective as much as I can. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I need to just, time just needs to take its course and things will work themselves out. But that's just in general how I try and look at things.
In regards, so you're telling me that when Harry Mackay and Charlie Curnow got injured late in the year, you weren't stressed?
I was a little bit stressed.
What about when Jack Higgins kicked that goal with 5 seconds to go?
That made me laugh.
I
didn't actually.
You were on TV in that game.
I
was on TV in that game.
You've both been on TV at multiple Carlton games.
Yeah.
Paul in the final lifting his daughter Elsa up when they kicked a goal. I think it was early in the game when they were 5 goals
was
up.
that before he left?
No, that was when we'd kicked goals.
Kicked goals in the prelim. They were 5 zip up.
Yeah.
And what was the goal?
It was the first goal of the game. Matt Cottrell running into an open goal.
What was it? What was the game where you were?
St Kilda.
That was St Kilda.
St Kilda game.
St Kilda game.
Horrific. I got banished from my house. So I'll probably need to engage your services for gratitude, because it was quite an ugly incident at my place that
We
afternoon.
go 8 wide. When Jonesy comes in the office Monday and Carlton have had a despicable performance, albeit it wasn't too many times last year because they're right in the hitting zone. You generally go 8 wide at least till midday, and then you might sort of throw a few curveballs like, geez, they weren't great in the weekend, the Blues. Cripples off.
I try not to let it affect me, football, because I used to let it affect me a lot. So, I've tried to not let it affect me anymore, and whatever happens there. But another thing I'll say to you is you have to keep your body and your mind healthy.
Yeah, good call.
Right? Great call. So if you can keep your body and your mind healthy, you'll be able to deal with these things better. That's very important. It's actually one of the most important things.
No, absolutely
so
spot on.
You got to keep your carbs in good tack, Dan.
The carbs actually as good as they've ever been. We won't go there. In regards, we spoke about mindset. What are some other really important qualities in business today, property in our game? What are some important qualities to have to succeed? And certainly you're an example of someone who's certainly succeeding in the property game. Yeah.
So what I will say is you need to have honesty, integrity, loyalty, and you need to be able to be trusted. So people can smell bullshit a mile away, and if you have the persona of a used car salesman, people won't deal with you, because in this industry specifically, You're dealing with a lot of money. You're dealing with your money. You're dealing with other people's money. You're dealing with people's assets. It's very important. And if people can't trust you, they won't deal with you. You also need to have a big network. So you need to meet as many people as possible. That's very important. The more people you know, the more likely you are to do some business. So that's very important. So have a big network of people that trust you and respect you, have a good name in the industry. It's very important. Another thing I'll say if you want to do well in business is you have to have a good partner. You have to have a good wife or husband that will support you and back you in. It's very important because if you have a toxic home environment, it'll flow through to work and you won't be able to perform well. So it's very important to have your partner back you in. That's crucial.
That's well said.
Another thing I'll say is you need to constantly be investing in yourself. Personal development's very important. So I used to do a lot of seminars, training, read books. I still do, probably not as much as I used to when I was in my early 20s, but I'd fly to Sydney to do a Grant Cardone boot camp. I've been to Tony Robbins' 4-day seminars where you're there till 1 a.m. walking on hot coals. So always investing in yourself and getting better is very important.
Can you take me through the Tony Robbins 4-day, would you say walking on coals?
Yeah, you walk on the hot coals.
Take me through that 4-day experience with Tony Robbins. I've heard a lot about it. I've never looked into it, but take me through it.
It's very tough. So it's 8 a.m. to midnight, 4 days.
Right.
They make the room really cold because you need to pay attention for a long time.
What sort of temperature?
It's cold.
Jeez.
Because when it's warm, you're relaxed, you're sleepy, but when you're cold, you're on edge, So
Good point.
They make the room really cold. It's 4 days, 8 to midnight. And, it's a whole bunch of different things where they'll really dive deep into your insecurities. They'll, like I said, the firewalk's on the first night. So they'll spend about 2 hours pumping you up and then you take your shoes off and you walk over the hot coals. But you get yourself into such a state that you don't feel it. You don't feel it. And it's to show you that the mind is so powerful. That's sort of the message behind it. So it's really good. I would highly recommend that everyone does it once in their life because it makes you step out of your comfort zone. So, you'll have to hug five strangers around you. Then,
Jonesy wouldn't like that.
You'll have to write down your deepest insecurities and then go read them to a stranger and then they'll tell you there. So it is confronting and it is challenging, but I highly recommend that everybody does it.
And he's big on the gratitude piece, which you went about.
Correct.
Went on. Yeah, there you go.
Correct.
Funny you say about the walking cold. Nigel Smart, I think before a final series, maybe in a preseason, the Adelaide half-backman, the bald head guy, great player, star. I think Malcolm Blight got him to run over coals, and he did that, Nigel Smart, and had infected feet for about a month. So
mine didn't get infected.
obviously Blighty didn't wind him up as well as what Tony did.
Seriously, they wind you up for about 2 hours. So, but yeah, I highly recommend. It's not even expensive. It's about $900 for 4 days. It's well worth it. I recommend everyone do it at least once. So just going back to that, you have to constantly invest in yourself, and you have to build a good brand. And what I will say is Jones Real Estate, you've built a very good brand. Very progressive, great with your social media. You're doing probably the best that I've seen. So
Thanks,
well done
Adrian.
there. That's okay.
We'll give you the bag of cash at the end. So you obviously dealt with quite a few agents. I mean, us aside, of course. What are the attributes that you've, as a developer, being in acquisitions, what are the attributes that really separate someone great from just the average pack?
Well, I would say the ones that do the best are the ones that constantly follow up. So that's very important. They're professional, they're diligent, they dress well, they're constantly building relationships. It's very important. So people that come in to see us regularly offer us new opportunities. They'll stay, some might even say, where are you looking to buy? Can you narrow down a suburb or an industrial patch or a residential patch? I'll go door knocking for you. Things like that show that they're very keen for business, very keen to build a relationship. And they'll be rewarded down the track too. If we ever have to sell something, whether that be the end product or a site, these things will pay off for them as well. So those are some of the things I would say make a good agent. You also have to have it in you. You really do, because you get out what you put in agency. Things don't fall in your lap. Before I became an agent, I thought you just go there and your houses go up, the boards go up, and you just sell them. On my first day, I got given phone book and they said you could call everyone and see if they want to sell. I had no idea that was the game. I thought they just fall on your lap. So you have to have it in you. You have to have it in you to chase and want to follow up and to handle rejection and to handle stress, because it is very stressful. So, you know, those are very important. And like I said earlier, you have to be trustworthy and you know, and you have to have a good personality.
No, really well said. Do you follow politics?
I do.
What do you?
Don't know if we want to get into politics.
We're not a political podcast, but obviously it's the flavour of the month. Donald Trump. What sort of impact do you reckon that has, if any, on world interest rates, sentiment? There's different varying opinions in the AFR the last 24, 48 hours about what impact that'll have. What's your take on the impact of Donald Trump coming into presidency?
Well, I look at it like this. I look at my life when he was around and just life in general compared to the last 4 years, and I would say it was much better back then for a number of reasons. Firstly, I never used to go to Woolies and say, fuck, that's expensive. That just never would cross my mind in 2019. It just I would never. You'd never think I just spent $150. I've got 8 things. You know, that just never happened back then. So inflation's just gone through the roof, and I think that the world is very woke now, and I hate it.
Interesting.
I hate it.
Well, we were over in the States at a similar time.
Paul's, you the same or?
I'm not a political commentator, Dan.
That's
but,
neither am I, but so I probably shouldn't ask the question.
Most people well, when I was in the States, I was in New York for 2 or 3 weeks, similar time to you, and we were asking a lot of the staff, employees, some of the employers, and the general consensus was they hate him as a person, but there were no wars, and life was better. So obviously he won in pretty much a landslide, but I don't know. I remember reading I was having a conversation. I was in Noosa. I was having a conversation with my father-in-law, and before Trump was voted in, they were saying if Trump comes in, you know, the US dollar will go nuts. It'd be good for the economy. It would, stimulate more certainty and optimism. And then as soon as he got voted in, all the same papers said that it's going to be apocalyptic, and it's just the papers. They're very biased these days. Yeah. I'm not a fake media operator, but you know, if you read the AFR or the ABC, or their opinions change like Melbourne's weather. So
well, put it this way: if you do you know the 3 things that Kamala Harris was in charge of as vice president?
I don't. Fill me in.
First one was the border. Second one was the exit of Afghanistan. And the third one was Russia-Ukraine. So all 3 have been disasters. So that should tell you enough that they're clearly incompetent to do their job.
I'm not well read enough I probably shouldn't ask. I'm not well read enough.
We probably shouldn't have started a politics discussion.
No, it was more around the Donald Trump. It's fascinating how, as Jonesy was saying, the amount of articles and positive and negative takes on what they will have, on the impact it will have on business, and then certainly in property across the world. So it is fascinating.
Yeah,
the trickle down.
I probably got a bit off track there.
No, it's good.
I think it'll be really good.
Great.
In short, I think it'll be really good. I think interest rates will start coming down, the economies will start booming, wars will stop, and you know it'll have a flow-on effect to Australia. So I think it'll be really good.
So we should all buy industrial units in Narre Warren.
Exactly.
There'll be some cracking ones there in about 12 to 18 months. So we'll wait and see. But mate, what we spoke about, obviously, some of the attributes like working hard and commitment and all those things which are critical, but just as critical, recovery, downtime, rest. What do you do from a hobby or rest perspective on a weekend, or you know, the off chance you get half a day to put the feet up?
I love spending time with my wife and my family. So that's one of the main things that I'll do. So we'll spend our weekends together, whether we're visiting family or just out the 2 of us. That's what I like to do in my spare time. I go to the gym probably 4 or 5 days a week too, and keep the diet clean during the week. So going to the gym is a hobby. I like going to the movies, going to the football, that sort of stuff. Going out to eat at nice places as well.
Just on the gym, it's come across my desk that back early days you were a bodybuilder.
I was about 10 years ago.
Are we able to possibly get you to send us some photos that we can put on the Jones Real Estate podcast?
There was a topless one in a pool from memory.
Yeah, there's a few topless ones in Mykonos.
And so what sort of, for the gym junkies out there, Luke Perrick from Jones Real Estate, he loves a five.
Tim's in the gym. Tim's in the gym.
He's got a sore calf at the moment, so he's been on the elliptical. That's Tim Spargo as well. But Luke, his breakdown is something like five 5 weight sessions a week, like basically 6 days in the gym. What was your breakdown when you're at the peak of your powers and you were looking like a bodybuilder yourself?
Much the same, one body part a day, with arms on the same day, just eating probably 5 meals a day. But at the time, this was before I got into real estate. So I was actually a PT.
Yeah, right.
So that was what I was doing.
You're more qualified as a PT than you are as a real estate agent.
As in Adrian or in general?
In general, like the barriers to entry into real estate, they're a lot stricter and harder to get into being a personal trainer.
Yeah,
so I think it's like a 12 week.
Took me 3 months, I think.
Yeah.
Full time or 6 months. So because I was doing a PT at the time, I had plenty of time to train and watch my diet. So, but yes, I can send you some photos because I'm pretty proud of them.
Do you envision ever getting back to that, or is it's just too busy with work, life, family?
Mate, there's no way I'm getting back there. I got a daughter coming, in May, so that's going to be even harder to get in what I'm doing now. So those glory days are behind me.
Any names?
We're thinking Isabella.
Very good.
Yeah, so that's what we're thinking.
Will you get some advice off Jonesy about how to manage kids and business?
Absolutely.
Well, stop watching the Carlton Football Club. It's probably a good start, but no, that's good. Well, we've had a pretty good wrap this morning. Any hard-hitting questions that you need to ask Dan or vice versa before we exit?
He's had a rough night with his top 5 ginger post, so I'll let him off today. But if we do another one, I'll have some questions ready for you.
You're a good man, Adrian. I really appreciate that, mate.
Thanks, Hannes.
Very
Thanks,
good.
Paul. Thank you.
Have a good one.